April 30th, 1945. Berlin is no longer a capital. It is a battlefield. For days, the earth has not stopped shaking. Soviet artillery crashes into the city in relentless waves, each explosion tearing open streets that were once lined with cafes, theaters, and government ministries. The sound is constant, like a storm that never moves on. Walls crack, roofs collapse, smoke rolls through avenues that once carried parades and marching bands. The war that began in triumph now ends in fire. Only 12 years earlier, torchlight processions filled these same streets. Banners hung from every building. Crowds raised their arms in perfect unison as promises of a 1,000-year Reich echoed between stone facades. Germany would rise. Germany would dominate. Germany would never fall again. Now the banners are burned. The facades are shattered, and the Reich is measured in city blocks, shrinking by the hour. The Red Army has encircled Berlin completely. Nearly 2 million Soviet soldiers press inward from every direction. Their artillery lines stretch for miles beyond the city's edge. Tanks rumble forward through suburbs reduced to rubble. Infantry units move street by street, clearing buildings room by room, cellar by cellar. Inside Berlin, what remains of the German defense is a desperate patchwork. Fragments of shattered divisions, Waffen-SS units refusing to retreat, police battalions, foreign volunteers, elderly reservists, and thousands of boys from the Hitler Youth, handed rifles and told they are the last shield of the nation. They are told victory is still possible, but victory has already slipped into memory. The city's infrastructure has collapsed. Electricity fails in entire districts. Water lines are ruptured. Hospitals overflow with wounded soldiers and civilians alike. Surgeons operate by candlelight, while artillery dust filters down from cracked ceilings. Morphine is scarce. Bandages are reused. In underground stations and cellars, families huddle together. Mothers whisper reassurances they do not believe. Fathers sit silently, staring at concrete walls, listening to the thunder above. Some clutch small suitcases packed weeks ago, as if departure might still be possible, but there is nowhere left to go. On the western edge of the city, Soviet troops break through defensive lines near Spandau. In the south, they push toward Tempelhof Airport, capturing runways cratered by bombs. In the north and east, resistance weakens as ammunition runs low. German units fall back again and again, leaving behind burning barricades and shattered vehicles. By April 29th, Soviet forces are within a few hundred meters of the Reichstag, and beneath the ruins of the Reich Chancellery, in a reinforced bunker buried under layers of concrete, Adolf Hitler waits. Those who see him in these final days describe a man aged beyond recognition. His left hand trembles uncontrollably. His posture is stooped. His once commanding voice has grown thin and strained. The maps laid before him show formations that no longer exist, divisions destroyed weeks earlier, but still moved across paper as if imagination could restore them. He issues orders to armies that have been annihilated. He demands counterattacks from generals who have no troops left to command. The reality above ground does not penetrate the bunker's concrete walls easily, but even here, the truth seeps in through every crack. Reports arrive describing Soviet troops advancing within blocks, ammunition depots lost, bridges destroyed, communication lines severed. On April 29th, Hitler marries Eva Braun in a brief ceremony inside the bunker. Witnesses later recall the atmosphere as surreal, detached from the chaos outside, a wedding beneath the collapsing capital. That same night, he dictates his final political testament. In it, he blames generals, enemies, traitors. He does not accept responsibility. Even at the end, he clings to the narrative that shaped the war from its beginning. Above them, Berlin burns. Soviet artillery intensifies as April 30th dawns. The Reichstag is nearly surrounded. German defenders inside prepare for an assault they know they cannot repel for long. Ammunition is counted bullet by bullet. Wounded soldiers are positioned with rifles beside windows. Shortly after noon, Hitler withdraws into his private quarters with Eva Braun. Those remaining in the bunker wait in tense silence. They know what is coming. A single gunshot echoes through the corridor. Moments later, aides enter the room. Hitler is dead, having shot himself. Eva Braun has taken poison. Their bodies are carried up a narrow staircase into the shattered garden above. Shells explode nearby as the corpses are placed in a crater, doused with fuel and set alight. Flames rise briefly against the gray Berlin sky, then flicker in the wind. There is no grand announcement to the German people, no final broadcast. News of his death spreads slowly, uncertainly through fragments of command. Outside the bunker, the battle rages on, largely unaware that the man whose will shaped it all is gone. Soviet troops storm the Reichstag in the afternoon. They advance under heavy fire, crossing open ground littered with debris and bodies. Machine guns cut through the smoke. Grenades explode in stairwells. Combat inside the building is savage and intimate. Rooms change hands multiple times in hours. The Reichstag, symbol of German political power, becomes a charred fortress. As night approaches, Soviet soldiers climb to the roof and raise the red flag above the ruins. The image will become iconic, but at that moment, it is simply a marker in a chaotic battlefield. Berlin's defenders continue to resist in pockets across the city. Some believe relief forces are still approaching. Others know the truth, but refuse to surrender out of fear of Soviet retribution. Stories from the Eastern Front have spread for years. Stories of brutality, of revenge for villages destroyed, for families lost. Fear fuels the fighting as much as ideology. In residential districts, civilians emerge cautiously from basements only to retreat again when gunfire erupts nearby. Entire apartment blocks collapse under artillery fire. Fires spread uncontrollably through wooden beams and shattered roofs. The sky glows orange long after sunset. The noise begins to change as midnight passes. Artillery becomes less frequent. Rifle fire echoes sporadically instead of continuously. It is not peace, but it feels like exhaustion. Inside the bunker, Joseph Goebbels refuses to leave. Loyal to the end, he remains with his wife and children. On May 1st, after poisoning their 6 children, Goebbels and his wife take their own lives in the garden above. The leadership of the regime disintegrates in a series of suicides and surrenders. Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz, named Hitler's successor in the Testament, attempts to negotiate partial surrender in the north, hoping to allow German soldiers to flee westward to American and British lines instead of falling into Soviet hands. But in Berlin, the outcome is already decided. On May 2nd, General Helmuth Weidling, commander of the Berlin defense area, recognizes the hopelessness of continued resistance. He orders remaining forces in the city to surrender. White flags appear in windows across districts still standing. Groups of soldiers emerge with hands raised, placing rifles on the ground. Some weep openly, others stare blankly ahead, as if unable to process the sudden silence. The Red Army occupies the city block by block. Soviet soldiers move through streets they have imagined for years, now reduced to ruins. For them, this is victory purchased at an extraordinary cost. The road from Moscow to Berlin has been paved with millions of lives. The human toll is staggering. Tens of thousands of German soldiers and civilians lie dead within the city. Soviet casualties are immense as well. The battle for Berlin, lasting just over 2 weeks, becomes one of the bloodiest urban battles in history. By May 7th, representatives of the German High Command signed the Instrument of Unconditional Surrender in Reims, France. A second signing takes place in Berlin on May 8th to satisfy Soviet demands. The war in Europe officially ends. Across the continent, church bells ring. Crowds gather in London, in Paris, in New York. Strangers embrace in streets far from the ruins of Berlin. Victory in Europe Day is declared. But in Berlin itself, celebration is muted by devastation. Entire districts are unrecognizable. Bridges lie in twisted heaps over the Spree. The Tiergarten is scarred with craters. Government buildings are skeletal shells. The once proud capital of Nazi Germany stands broken, divided, occupied. The night Germany collapsed was not a single dramatic moment, but a series of unraveling threads. Military defeat, political suicide, moral reckoning, physical destruction. The ideology that promised 1,000 years lasted 12. In its place, a divided Germany would emerge. The city of Berlin would itself become a symbol of a new global struggle, split between East and West as the Cold War took shape. Barbed wire and concrete would later carve the city in two, a lasting scar of the conflict that ended here. Yet in those first quiet mornings after the surrender, the future was uncertain. Civilians searched for food among ruins. Soldiers awaited transport to prisoner of war camps. Refugees flooded roads beyond the city. Millions displaced across Europe. The collapse of Berlin marked more than the fall of a government. It marked the end of an era defined by total war, industrialized destruction, and ideological extremism on a scale the world had never seen. As smoke slowly cleared from the skyline, the magnitude of what had occurred began to settle in. The Holocaust had been exposed in liberated camps. Entire nations lay shattered. Borders would be redrawn. Justice would be pursued in courtrooms soon to convene at Nuremberg. The war that began with invasion and blitzkrieg ended in occupation and surrender. And in the center of it all stood Berlin, silent at last. The thunder of artillery faded. The fires burned lower. The city exhaled. What remained was not triumph or glory, but ruins and memory. The night Germany collapsed was the final chapter of a regime built on aggression and hatred. It ended not in heroic legend, but in bunkers, in smoke, in exhaustion. And as the sun rose over a shattered capital in May 1945, it illuminated a simple, irreversible truth. The Reich was gone, the war in Europe was over, and the world would never be the same again.